So today is the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Yeah. So it's hard to believe, 75th, yeah. So it's hard to believe that that happened just a few years before I was born, because 75 seems like a long time ago, you know. That's what people did when there were barbarians, you know. But it was actually just a few years before I was born. And since I've been born, there's been many other circumstances like that too. And to watch the response of different people in these circumstances really indicates the disadvantages of self-centeredness. Okay, so if we just start out with our country, in the 1936 Olympics, sponsored by Nazi Germany, the US took all the Jews off of their Olympic team in order not to annoy Hitler. Yeah, the US also turned away a boat of refugees during the war. And the Allies knew for many years, I think since 1942, what was going on at Auschwitz. Yeah, there were some Polish freedom fighters who deliberately got themselves arrested and went to Auschwitz so that they could see what was going on there. I mean, these men are amazing, yeah? And smuggled out reports to the Allies, letting them know about the crematoriums and the trains arriving again and again and again. And what was found out later was the Allies' response. I think they may have even known about this since 1940. I'm not sure, 1940, 1942. The Allies' response, because, let me back up a minute, one of the things these freedom fighters pled with the Allies to do in the smuggled out reports was to either bomb Auschwitz. One of them wrote in his report, even if it means killing me, you have to destroy this place because of what's happening. Or they asked the Allies, please bomb the train tracks that are leading here, that, you know, brought 1.3 million people to Auschwitz. The Allies' response, it was later learned, was we've got to focus on military targets, not on civilian ones. So they didn't bomb the train tracks, and trains full of people kept coming. Yeah, 1.3 million went through Auschwitz. Yeah. I think 1.1 million were Jews. The rest were Polish POWs, Soviet POWs, Roma people, gays, lesbians, trans people. Yeah, so they were all thrown in there. So it's astounding to think that the Allies knew about this. And although, okay, bombing Auschwitz itself would have been horrible, killing all those people, but the train tracks, you know, you could get rid of those without killing civilians. So it's astounding to see what the self-centered mind that just cares about our own well-being, you know, does. also, right before Auschwitz was liberated, they took about 56,000 of the people who were remaining there, everybody but the people who were really sick, who couldn't walk. And they wanted them to walk back into German territory, and so they could house them in Germany itself, because the Soviet troops were advancing from the east, and they were soon going to take over Auschwitz, which was in Poland. It seems like the reason they wanted to move all these people was, one, they didn't want the world to see what was going on, because it was so awful. Two, they thought they could use those surviving people as slave labor to keep the war going on from the Nazi perspective. And there was a third reason too. What was it? Oh, they thought that maybe, if the Germans thought maybe if they were defeated, that they could use these prisoners as bargaining chips. Yeah, when a treaty was made. So they took 56,000 people, and it was a death march. The death march. I don't know how far they had to walk. It was a ways. I don't know how many days it lasted. But 15,000 people at least died on the way or were shot. And sometimes the road took them right through villages. And people in the village, were looking out the window and seeing all this going on. But they themselves were so terrified that they dare not speak out against it or do anything. Yeah, because the Nazi regime it was out of control what was going on. So some of those people from the death march are still alive. Yeah, and they're still telling their stories. There was in Israel on Thursday an event commemorating the freeing of Auschwitz. And then today, which is the actual day, there's an event in Poland doing it. It's been marred a bit by politics, because Russia, in true form, has been blaming Poland for Auschwitz and so on, and what went on. And the Poles, of course, don't like that. Now, of course, there were some Poles who supported the Nazi effort, okay? Even in countries like France, it was the whole Vichy government supported the Nazi efforts. But there were a lot of Poles who were freedom fighters too, yeah. I mean, Poland, for centuries, Poland is stuck right between Russia and Germany. So everybody marches across Poland. And, some years it's under, Russian, Soviet control, some years under German control. I mean, everybody just walks across Poland. It's fairly flat, apparently, so you can move your troops fairly easily. So, to think, what always amazes me when I hear the stories of people who endured things like this, is how resilient they are. Yes, they suffer from PTSD, yeah, but they also have gone on to make good lives for themselves. Yeah. And the same has happened with the Tibetans who had to flee Tibet with, the Chinese communist takeover. Yeah, again, making very good lives for themselves. Those people don't seem to have so much PTSD. But of course, I think what they went through was it was very serious, but not quite as serious as what happened during the Holocaust. Although they may disagree. So the purpose of talking about this is just for us to be aware of what happens when we let our self-centered mind and our ignorance take control of our lives. Yeah. And, what happens when we have prejudice against different groups of people and we don't try and root out our prejudice or even notice that it exists. Yeah. Sometimes when you're in the dominant group, you don't even notice that there's bias. Yeah. So to try and notice our prejudice, notice the way, even if we don't have things against whole groups of people, how somebody may harm us and we just ostracize that person from our love and compassion, based on one action somebody does. We just, forget it. Yeah, never being compassionate to that person. So to really watch, what happens in our own minds and not just think, oh, this is other people's self-centeredness, other people's ignorance, but this is, we have the same 84 afflictions as everybody else, and I often, I've read a lot about the Second World War. I've read a lot about the Cultural Revolution, and in my readings and study, the question for me is always, what would I have done if I had been in those circumstances? Would I have the inner moral strength, the fearlessness to resist and endanger my own life, to speak out against those things or to help people who were suffering, if my own life were put at risk? Yeah. And that's always a question that I ask myself. Or if I were incarcerated, either in a Chinese prison or, in Auschwitz itself, how would I have acted? How would I have thought? Yeah. Could I have been mentally strong in those situations? Yeah. If I were the child of an SS soldier, yeah, how would I have thought about my parent? Yeah. If I was a school child who was, you know, had the, was, what do you call it? Not invoked, but, called into the the groups for the youth. Yeah. We had one of our skits here one time. We had all the people who had grown up under communism do a skit together. Yeah, you remember that? So, yeah, and you all sang the songs that you were taught as children. And being inducted, that's the word, being inducted into youth groups and not totally understanding what they were about or what you were getting indoctrinated with. Yeah. And then when you get older, do you have the strength of mind, the strength of integrity to look and look with clear wisdom about the situation you grew up in and how it influenced you, being on the side of the people who were persecuting others, yeah? Or if you were on the side of the people who were being persecuted, when you're out of that situation, how do you, build a good life for yourself? When I was in Israel, I was first there 1972, 73, and then I went again in 1997 to teach the Dharma. And in 97, that was 22 years ago. And I suspect even now, World War II, the Holocaust is very much alive. Yeah, when I was in Poland in the 90s, I was teaching there. The Second World War was very much still alive in people's minds. Because you were conditioned, you were influenced by those things. And so how do people deal with that, And it seems to me a spiritual practice is so necessary to be able to deal with that and to forgive and to go on in life with hope and optimism, like His Holiness has. But what do I have inside? Yeah, do I have that kind of strength to do that? So it remains something to to ask, and also to ask myself, how do I build up that strength? How do I build up my integrity? How do I build up the ability to forgive? How do I build up fortitude and patience? Yeah, because those are qualities that we can consciously develop. Yeah. So what are the Dharma methods to use to build these qualities up? And am I using them? Am I practicing that? Yeah. Or do I just write them down in my notebook and put them on a shelf?